From far and wide, Oilers fans, this is Dolynny TV. And welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel, guys. Today, as we get set for the game against the Calgary Flames, which is going to be a big make or break game for the Oilers season, I believe. Again, like I said, the last time we faced Calgary, it was our most important game of the year. Well, guess what? Round number 3 is just as, if not more important. Let me have a sip of tea here and get to why it is. So, essentially, let's go take a look at the Western standings. We're not talking so much about Calgary. We are talking about why this playoff race for the Oilers, should they stay in it, is going to come down to one team in particular, and that's about it. So, when you look at the standings in the Western Conference, hold on, maybe I should get to the 2018-2019 standings first. You've got the Canucks, Oilers, Ducks, Coyotes, all within 4 points of each other. The Canucks hold that final wild card spot right now. But when you look over in the Central, it's the Stars, Avalanche tied with 50. One of those two will finish in the third spot in the Central Division. Okay, fine, Danny, let's scratch that off the list. Don't need to worry about those two teams. Obviously, yes, need to worry about Dallas, need to worry about Minnesota and St. Louis. So one of those three teams. But what I'm going to say is I believe it all comes down to Minnesota. It's the Oilers in the Pacific fighting for that second wildcard spot, and it is the, well, simple as this, it is the Minnesota Wild in the Central fighting for that final wildcard spot. Now, of course, like I said, you've got Dallas and the Canucks tied for 50 points each for that, well, final or first wildcard spot. One of them takes up the final, one of them takes the first, tied at 50 points right now, however you want to look at it. But the thing is, I don't believe this is going to be a year where we see two teams from one division make the playoffs in the wild card. I don't buy it. I hope not. I really think for the Oilers to have success, they're going to have to be the team in the Pacific, and there's going to have to be a team from the Central being the Minnesota Wild. And why I look at the Minnesota Wild as opposed to any other team in the race, right? No Vancouver, no Anaheim, no Dallas, no St. Louis. There's a reason I look at Minnesota, and you got to go at this. Minnesota was a team last year that finished third in their division, 101 points, so they were, what, fourth best, tied for fourth best in the Western Conference of the NHL for points. That's not a bad finish. Now, yes, Eric Staal was hot last year. They came together very well. However, this year for Minnesota, you got to say, teams change quite a bit year to year, yes, okay. But this team still probably has the same core value of making the playoffs and getting the job done. Well, this year things have been kind of similar in Edmonton as they have in Minnesota. As for Minnesota, depth scoring has been an issue. Like, you talk about guys who have scored more than 10 goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They only have 5 goal scorers over 10 goals. Now, yeah, okay, the Oilers don't have very many more, but what I'm saying in terms of that is they don't have a 20-goal scorer. Guys, come on, it's that's crazy for the Minnesota Wild this year. They do not have a 20-goal scorer, and that really should sink them, especially considering where the Oilers have been. And we have 4 10-goal scorers so far this year. Yeah, so we have 4 10-goal scorers, so maybe I should lay off. I thought we had 6, pardon me. I'm not quite fully awake this morning. Should have taken the extra second to read those stats before coming on, but you guys know me, and that's the style I run. So Connor McDavid, however, makes up for that and some. 29 goals, so you give 15 to another guy, suddenly you've got 2 guys at 15 goals. Well, okay, fine and dandy there. Leon Draisaitl, 24 goals, Nuge 15, Chiasson 17, and really, that's then the story. Guys just not scoring goals anywhere else in the lineup. I don't think we have, other than Darnell Nurse, we don't have a guy over 5 goals. We have 5 guys over 5 goals. Okay, so for the Oilers, that's a scary stat. But when you talk about the Minnesota Wild here, they've got guys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the Minnesota Wild actually have more goal scorers over 5 goals. However, don't have as many goals as the Oilers in terms of your top goal scorers, right? Minnesota Wild have 131 goals on the season. Edmonton has 136. So when you're talking offensive production, these teams should be similar, but Edmonton should be better. 5 goals in the matter of 47 games against the Minnesota Wild's 47 games. That should win you 1 or 2 extra games by my math. Well, guess what? 1 or 2 extra games puts us 2 points or 4 points ahead of the Minnesota Wild, who we're currently tied with at 49 points. Okay? So all of a sudden, you're now not talking tied with Minnesota or tied with Vancouver or tied with Dallas for the first or second. We own that first wild card spot. Just going on the math comparison to Minnesota being the exact same record, 23, 21, and 3 against us, right? So we both own that record. However, we have more goals for. We should mathematically be winning more games. Problem being, we've allowed 148 goals as opposed to Minnesota's 137. And Minnesota's gotten a lot closer to league average goaltending out of both of their goaltenders. Now, in terms of what I mean by that, obviously, Cam Talbot still kind of having that struggle that is, right? Cam Talbot, let's get his stats up here. I didn't think I'd need them, but might as well grab them as quickly as humanly possible here. And so Cam Talbot, you look at his stats, and it's as simple as this of a season for him. He's had a, where are we? 317 goals against average and a 896 save percentage. Could you imagine if Cam had a 9 save percentage? That would be something ridiculous. But when you talk about Devin Dubnyk for the Minnesota Wild, it is as simple as this. He has 264, 912 save percentage, but then you go look at the backup, who has now managed to have a .26 save percentage or goals against average better than Cam Talbot as the backup. Well, guys, that's simple math. Go over the course of 14 games. Let me do the math on my cell phone for once. Over the course of 14 games times .26, that's 3.64 goals against less on average kind of math right there, if that's what you're mathing out. Well, guess what? That's a big difference for the Minnesota Wild when they're saving almost 4 goals. Let's go with 4 goals extra in those 14 games. Well, okay, now you're talking about what? Bang. 2 games? Well, now we see, right? I was talking, we should be 2 games above Minnesota, and they should be 2 games below us, but now Minnesota owns the edge on goaltending, and that's exactly why we own this battle against Minnesota, is we have to see which team is going to get everything right at once and start going on a streak. When you talk about the standings the last 5 or 10 games for the Minnesota Wild, okay, the Minnesota Wild are 5-5 in their last 10 games. They've lost a game, okay, that's good because the Anaheim Ducks won against them the other night. However, for the Oilers now we've won 2 games. So this is where I think my last point for this video comes in very handy. For the Oilers, it all comes down to tonight against the Calgary Flames. See, I came full circle. I wanted to come talk back about the Flames game because the Flames game is the toughest game we have left on our schedule before the All-Star break. If we can win against the Flames and then play decent, defensively responsible, get some goaltending, we should win the next 2 against Carolina and Detroit. Suddenly you're talking about a 6-point stretch into the All-Star game. I don't care if you're running Minnesota and they run the exact same. That keeps us in the race. Yes, winning 3 games, especially against one to start it off against the league-leading Calgary Flames, that's a tough, tall order for our Edmonton Oilers. However, you've got to look at it as such in the fact that Minnesota is kind of that team hanging on in the same exact position we are. And if we have anyone to fear in this playoff race, whether it be Vancouver, whether it be anybody at all, Dallas and Colorado kind of remain the wild card spots because 50 points, and that's the 3rd place in the Central. So, okay, we've talked about this wild card race being underwhelming a little bit. The Oilers and Minnesota are the 2 teams I really think are going to come out and grab these spots and battle all the rest of the way home. By the All-Star break, the Oilers will have 32 games left to determine their playoff fate. We've kissed the season goodbye 3 or 4 times at this point, But 32 games is a lot of games to get the right things done. All of a sudden, let's talk about it. So we go get those 6 points. Suddenly we have 55 points on the season. Well, you need 90, let's say 93 points to get the wild card spot. That's 38. That's 38 points in 32 games. You win what? You win 19 games out of those 32 games. So for the Oilers, they have to go 19 and 13. For the Oilers with Connor McDavid, that should not be a challenge, especially if they get some defensive responsibility and some goaltending. Guys, I'm going to stop ranting because I think I really have to turn this one over to you guys. I don't think this one is one I can have by myself. I need you to think. Am I right to think that the Minnesota Wild are the scariest team for us when it comes to the playoff race? Let me know in the comments section down below. Have your say. I'll respond. We'll talk about it a little bit, and I will catch you guys as always in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to Dolynny TV.